Do you remember FNAF World, the RPG by Scott Cawthon after the release of Five Nights at Freddy's 4? Back when we all thought the franchise would be over. Of course you do. It was probably one of the most controversial games he's ever made. Now, how about the FNAF RPG that came before it? Do you remember that? Do you remember the Five Nights at Freddy's fan game that broke the classic FNAF formula and decided to do something completely unique and never seen before? A game that turned the target audience for FNAF completely on its head, with more vulgarities in a single 3-hour game than your drunk stepdad. I'm sure a light bulb is going off in some of your heads already, but for those of you who don't follow, or for those of you who are too young to remember the early days of Five Nights at Freddy's, the game I'm talking about is Five Nights at Fuckboys, a FNAF RPG created by Sable Lynn and Joshua Shaw back in November of 2014. For all of you that remember, I'm going to take you on a stroll down memory lane as we dive back into the world of Five Nights at Fuckboys. Since the franchise has been released, there has been an updated version created by Zane. The update greatly fixes a lot of problems that the originals had, such as the sound effects not being louder than an atomic bomb, and much needed difficulty balancing. This video will only be covering the first game in the series, but note that there are more games, and if you like this video and are interested in hearing me talking about the other ones, definitely let me know in the comments below. Before we begin, I'd like to say thank you all so much for the support on my last video. Within 4 days of that video being posted, it passed 1,000 views, which is absolutely crazy, and I honestly can't thank you all enough. Roar the Rapper corrected me on the comment I made about taking shifts in my last video, and that gave me a fun idea. I think it'd be fun to ask you guys a question at the end of the video, and show my favorite answer at the beginning of the next video, so stick around to the end of the video if you'd like to participate. Without further ado, let's get into the video. In Five Nights at Fuckboys, we play as Freddy. We start on the show stage in the original game's location. We can move around the pizzeria freely and explore wherever we'd like. Even though this game is pretty linear in terms of progression, I really like that no location is blocked off until we make progress, aside from the office, which is only unlocked at the end of the game, but that's for good reason. The goal of this game is to get into the office, presumably to kill the security guard, just like the animatronics from the original. However, if you just try to go to the office right away, the security guard will see you coming because of the cameras and shut the door on you, but not before Freddy says this amazing line.
I want you inside of me.
And they say chivalry is dead. Ladies, this is what a real man should be saying to you. That was a joke, by the way. So, since it's clear that the security guard can see us coming, what would the logical choice be? Do we wait outside of his door so that the power runs out? No, of course not. That'd make too much sense. What we do instead is beat the shit out of all the cameras so that he can't see us. Alright, cool. A new objective. There are multiple cameras around the pizzeria, just like the original, but we really have to be careful as each of these cameras act as a boss. You can tell which cameras are more difficult than others because before you choose to fight them, you can see their difficulty listed at the top of the screen, which I think is a really nice addition. But before I can dive into the boss fights, we have to talk about how this game actually plays. As I said, this is an RPG, so there is a lot of turn-based fighting. But try your best not to let that turn you off from giving this game a try. As you walk around the pizzeria, randomly you will enter fights with party hats. There are multiple types of party hats: alpha hats, beta hats, gamma hats, and omega hats. Each listed is more difficult than the last, each having more health, damage, and skills as the last. The area of the pizzeria that you're in dictates which type of party hat you will find. This is a small way of letting you know which area you should be going to. If you're used to fighting alpha hats, which are the weakest, and you wander into an area that has omega hats, which are the strongest, that's a pretty good sign that you probably shouldn't be over there yet. That's what I mean when I say that the game can be pretty linear progression-wise. However, I really like that even though in that situation there's no way you'd be beating an omega party hat, you still have the option to venture over there, something which I wish modern RPGs would do. Beating party hats, or any enemies, will give you XP and tokens, an in-game currency you can use to buy items. At the start of the game, you can buy items from the vending machine in the dining area. The vending machine sells really shitty items, but shopping from here will be pretty necessary for the early moments of the game. When I first went into this game, I told myself I wouldn't use items in battle. I was thinking of this game like Pokemon. In Pokemon, I hate using items in battle, so I thought I could do that here too. Let me tell you, you will need to use items in battle, as this game is most likely impossible without them. However, unlike Pokemon, where using items in battle makes the game incredibly easy, even with items in battle in Five Nights at Fuckboys, you'll still probably find yourself struggling from time to time. I think if you want to say you don't want to use items in battle for a challenge, don't use pizzas or cakes. Pizzas heal health and cakes revive party members. A character you get later in the game can do both of these things with a special ability, so using them, while doing the same thing, can't be spammed as much as the items can. In battle, I liked to use just the soda as an item, since I felt it didn't make every fight super easy. Soda just increases your party member's SP, which stands for special points. Don't worry, I'll get into all that later. I suppose I should probably talk about how the battling works. As you enter a battle, for each character in your party, you get to select one of 4 options: Scream, Skills, Guard, and Item. Scream is just a basic attack that costs you nothing. Skills will allow you to use one of your skills. Each character will gain a maximum of 5. Every character starts with Scan, an ability that costs nothing and doesn't even waste a turn. It allows you to see the health of a target enemy and anything special that the enemy does. I mainly only ever used this for bosses, since a lot of them have cheats to make them more difficult. I'll get into that later. Guard will make that party member guard for the turn. It costs nothing and makes the character's defense increase massively for the turn. And Item allows a character to choose an item you have in your inventory and target another party member or itself with it. After all of your party members have selected what they will do, based on your party members' speed stats and the speed stat of your enemies, each entity in the fight will perform the action they chose. After every action has been taken, the cycle repeats. It continues to repeat until either you defeat all the enemies or the enemies defeat your entire party. With the basics explained, we can get into the meat of the game. Just from walking around, you'll be able to find the other animatronics, Bonnie, Foxy, and Chica. Well, you can't see Chica because she's in the kitchen and the kitchen is locked. The kitchen and the office are the only 2 rooms you can't enter immediately. So, trying to use just Freddy to progress is not fun and is very frustrating and tedious, so your best course of action is to add the other characters to your party to help out. Walking into the back room, you'll find Bonnie. Upon talking to him, he tells you he's missing his face, and he wants you to find it for him. We'll get back to Bonnie later, as he's the last member you'll add to your party. In the back room, you also see this party hat. These party hats act as mini-bosses in the game, and you can find them in various areas of the game. Once you beat any of them, which can be a pretty hard challenge, especially the first one, Balloon Boy will appear. Balloon Boy acts as the shopkeeper in this game. Once you unlock the first Balloon Boy, you will never have to go back to the vending machine again. Balloon Boy, along with selling pizzas, sodas, and cakes, also sells helpful items, such as better versions of weapons for each character, armor, and accessories. Each increases a specific stat for your party members. Each time you unlock a Balloon Boy, the items he sells gets better and better, giving you a clear incentive to fight these mini-bosses. I really like how simple his shop is. It's very straightforward with what you should buy, and you won't find yourself sitting in the shop for long periods of time trying to figure out the best way to build your party. But in order to beef up our party, we actually need to fill it first. We know we can't get to Chica yet because she's locked in the kitchen, so that means we have to get Foxy first. Walking into Pirate's Cove, we see Foxy behind the curtain. I'm not going to say what he's doing in there, but I'm sure you can read. At this point, if you walk back into the main room, you can find a lighter in a box. Taking the lighter and going back into Pirate's Cove, Freddy attempts to burn it down, but before he can do that, Balloon Boy steals the lighter from Freddy and forces you to buy it from him. There's literally no purpose behind this besides to show you how annoying Balloon Boy is. After you buy the lighter back from Balloon Fuck, you can actually burn down Pirate's Cove. Doing so forces Foxy to join your party. At this point, if you enter the bathroom, you can find a key. While you're in here, you might think to enter the actual bathrooms. You can enter the men's room just fine, but upon trying to enter the women's room, Freddy won't because he's a man. We'll have to come back later with a female character. Speaking of, with this key, we can unlock the kitchen. Upon doing so, Chica joins our party. With Chica, we'll be able to get into the women's bathroom. Inside, there's a chest with a voucher inside. There's also a party hat mini-boss. After beating it and unlocking the bathroom balloon boy, talking to him lets you exchange the voucher for Bonnie's face. Going back to the back room, you give Bonnie his face back and he joins your party. Congrats! You now have the entire party of characters with you. Now's probably a good time to talk about each character's skills. Every 5 levels, a character will unlock a new one, with a maximum of level 20 and 4 total unlocked skills. Freddy's level 5 skill is Top Hat Toss. It costs SP or special points, and the amount it costs depends on Freddy's level. This is the same for most abilities in the game, spanning across all characters. The higher the level, the more it costs. Top Hat Toss deals large damage to an enemy and hits twice. His level 10 ability is Lead Stinger. It deals damage once and deals more damage if the target enemy is poisoned. There are several buffs and debuffs in this game, and poison is one of them. This move also has a small chance to inflict poison upon dealing damage. The poison debuff will cause the inflicted entity to take damage at the end of the turn. Freddy's level 15 skill is Toreador March, a skill that hits several times. Each hit deals a very small amount of damage, but it leaves the targeted enemy with a large chance of being put to sleep, which is another debuff. Entities with sleep will be unable to perform any actions until they wake up. Freddy's level 20 ability is Death Inhale. This ability can only be used once per battle and costs 100 TP. TP stands for Technique Points, and a character gains them by being damaged by enemies. 100 is the maximum amount a character can have, and every battle starts each party member with 0, so getting any character to 100 TP can prove to be a challenge. Death Inhale will do an enormous amount of damage to a targeted enemy and hit them multiple times. Foxy's level 5 ability is Plank Walk, an ability that deals a large amount of damage and has a chance to paralyze the targeted enemy. Paralyzed entities have a chance to not be able to perform actions. The chance of causing paralysis increases with the more TP Foxy has. Foxy's level 10 ability is Rushdown. When used, Foxy will hit the enemy several times with pretty high damage on each hit. Foxy's level 15 ability is Speed Share, an ability that just increases all party members' speed. And his level 20 ability is Sea Shanty, an ability that greatly decreases the targeted enemy's attack and defense, and has a chance to inflict silence, which is another debuff. Entities with silence will be unable to use their skills. Chica's level 5 ability is Pizza Pass, an ability that heals a target party member a great amount of health, by far her best ability. Her level 10 ability is Fearless Flight. It deals a pretty shitty amount of damage to a target enemy, but any buffs that enemy had get removed, so that's really nice. Chica's level 15 ability is Caffeine Revival. It does exactly what you think it does. Revives a dead party member. I never found myself using this much since enemies tended to hit all party members rather than just focusing on one, which is really nice. Chica's level 20 ability is Mama Bird. It increases a target party member's defense and increases their SP by 50%. Because I tended to use sodas a lot in battle, I never found myself using this ability very often. And finally, we have Bonnie, the character who I honestly found the most useless in battle. It's very clear he's supposed to be a general support, just like Chica is a healing support, but he kind of does it in a way that you almost never use him. I usually ended up using Bonnie as the character who used items, but his level 5 ability is Bunny Hop, which hits a target enemy multiple times and has a small chance to lower their defense, and I do mean a small chance. His level 10 ability is Riff Wave, by far the ability I had him use the most. It deals a large amount of damage to a target enemy and has a medium chance to inflict poison. The poison is the main reason I used this ability, just so Freddy's ability would deal more damage. Bonnie's level 15 ability is Backup Bash. It deals a lot of damage and has a medium chance to decrease the targeted enemy's attack. This ability actually deals more damage depending on how many party members are dead, but since you probably won't have members dead all too often, and the fact that Freddy and mainly Foxy are your two main hitters, you will almost never use this ability unless you're specifically trying to decrease enemy damage. And finally, his level 20 ability is Motivation Jam, in my opinion, his best ability. It greatly increases the defense and attack of a targeted party member for about 4 turns. Super helpful when paired with Foxy or Freddy when he uses Death Inhale. Wow, That took longer than I thought it would. I apologize. Let's continue. Again, in order to get to the office, we have to knock out all the cameras. The first camera I recommend beating is the show stage camera, as it has no cheats. Just beat it normally, and you're on to the next one. The dining room camera is what I suggest you do next. It and every other camera from this point forward will have a cheat to make their fight more difficult. This one will drain your SP every turn. With how early in the game you'll fight this camera, this cheat is devastating. The back room camera will get stronger and stronger each turn, so the longer you spend trying to kill it, the more and more damage it will do to your party members. The West Hall camera is one of the worst. Every turn it will heal around 500 health. Considering where you are at the time, that can be 70 to 80% of your damage output each turn, making this fight take way longer than it needs to. Pack plenty of soda for this one. The East Hall camera's cheat really isn't a problem. Like the dining room camera, instead of draining your SP, it drains your TP instead. At this point in the game, you probably won't find yourself relying on TP yet, unless you like to spam Foxy's plank walk ability, which you should really be using Rushdown for Foxy anyway, since it's just better in most cases. The bathroom camera can cause a real problem if you're not prepared. Your entire party is inflicted with poison the entire fight, and there's no way to get rid of it. Depending on when you decide to fight this camera, this can be a real run killer. Pirate's Cove camera has a speed so high that the only character in your party that will perform their action before it is Foxy. Highly recommend using Foxy's speed share ability during this fight. After doing that, it should be a cakewalk. The supply closet camera is by far the easiest, considering you're fighting them in the correct order, which is the order that I'm telling you to fight them in. The camera will literally heal your party. I have no idea why it does this, but it does. The East Hall corner camera isn't the worst, considering I fought some of the other optional mini-bosses before this. That might be the reason I feel this way. I'll get into those optional mini-bosses after these cameras. This camera will perform 2 actions per turn rather than 1. I could imagine that if I didn't beat the optional mini-bosses, that this fight and the next would have been much more difficult. The West Hall corner camera is probably the last one you should fight, mainly because of its health and damage output. But its cheat is super important to note. It is immune to all debuffs, which means it can't be paralyzed, poisoned, silenced, or put to sleep. This will greatly change how you go about fighting it, since, at least through my playthrough, I put a huge emphasis on poisoning my enemies. After beating the final camera, the power to the pizzeria will go out and you'll be able to enter the office for the final battle. But before I talk about that, there's a few things that happen before you fight the final camera that we need to talk about. I'll start with the optional mini-bosses I was talking about earlier. Once you max a character to level 20, their toy variant will appear on the map somewhere. Challenging them and beating them will give you the best version of said character's weapon. I fought them in order of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, then Mangle. I do not recommend you beat them in that order, as some of them are much more difficult than others. I recommend you start with Toy Freddy, then Mangle, then Toy Bonnie, and ending with Toy Chica. Toy Chica was surprisingly the most difficult out of all of them. She was able to hit all of my party members multiple times in a single turn for huge damage, easily halving all of their health. This is one of the only fights where I felt like I needed to use healing items in battle because she would not stop fingering me in the asshole. There's also an optional boss you can fight. Well, it's optional to beat, mandatory to fight, that being the puppet. The wiki says the puppet spawns after beating your second camera, but I swear I beat at least 4 cameras before he spawned. Maybe that's because I was playing the complete collection instead of the original though. Either way, once the puppet spawns, a timer will appear in the top corner of your screen. When it runs out, you have to fight the puppet. You don't have to beat him to progress, but there's no reason not to since he gives a large amount of XP. In the complete collection, there's no way to reset this timer, and it will continue to count down even during fights. In my playthrough, it ran out while I was fighting Toy Freddy, and Toy Freddy had killed Chica. I had no way to revive her going into the puppet's fight, and that definitely made it much more difficult and tense since Chica is almost mandatory to beat any fight because she's the one that will be healing and reviving your characters. After beating the puppet, you can go into the bathroom and have an optional fight with the marionette, a more difficult version of the puppet. I didn't do this fight because I didn't know if it would be harder than the office fight. Considering finishing the office fight ends the game, I'm gonna have to assume that the marionette is not more difficult, but again, I never fought it. After doing these optional fights that you should definitely do if you don't want to get butt banged in the final fight, you can head down to the office and go inside. Upon entering, you're greeted by Golden Freddy, who's pissed that you didn't invite him to join the fun you've been having throughout the night. Golden Freddy is Five Nights at Fuckboy's final boss. He is the only boss in the game to have multiple other enemies you have to fight along with him. Alongside Golden Freddy, you also have to fight 4 Omega Party Hats, which, if you remember, are the most difficult party hat in the game. They're not too much of an issue, but I definitely recommend you take them out before you start targeting Golden Freddy, as their attacks can rack up a large amount of damage if left unanswered. As I said before, after beating Golden Freddy, the game ends. Golden Freddy screams, for no joke, 5 nights straight because he's a little pissy poop baby. Overall, I think Five Nights at Fuckboys is a great experience. However, I have one major problem with the game, that being the first early bit of the game before you can unlock Foxy. Playing with only an underleveled Freddy is so unfun, as you will pretty much be bodied by 90% of the enemies you fight, and God forbid you have to fight more than one enemy at a time. This early section alone will take up a big amount of your playthrough, as you'll find yourself having to grind for quite a long time to even be a little bit of a threat to the enemies. However, once you start collecting party members, the game gets much more enjoyable, as the only time I ever found myself grinding after getting party members was to get more tokens to buy upgrades at the shop. And even when I had to grind for tokens, I didn't have to grind for more than 5 minutes to get what I needed. So if you push through the early game, 90% of the game is a super fun and fluent experience. I should also mention that this game has multiple difficulties you can play on. I played on the easiest difficulty since the harder difficulties get super unfair, but if you're a true gamer, I recommend trying out the harder difficulties. If you want to watch my playthrough for this game, you can find it on the gaming channel Dexter Black. I've been Dexter, and before we end it, the question of the video is, what's your favorite FNAF fan game and why? With the question being asked, thank you so much for watching the video all the way to the end. I can't thank you enough. And I'll see you all next time. See ya!